Hey YouTube, this is Will from Will Development. It's my 383rd weekly update. This was how do I put it? Sort of an interesting week. I have a kind of a mini competition. It's closer to a charity event than a competition. On Sunday, it's a same day weigh-in event. It's going to be 231 and under and 231 and over for the lightweight and heavyweight. And I'm like currently walking around at like 195. So, I'm going to be giving up some weight to some other people. But again, it's more like a charity event. A lot of people I know are going to be there. And it just kind of seemed like a nice little, almost a weekend sort of thing to get away. And honestly, they had some cool events I hadn't seen in a while. Things like a car deadlift and a Conan's wheel, as well as a max double overhand axle lift, which is very rarely do you see a strength specific or a grip specific strength event in shows. Usually they just consider like farmers the strength portion, the grip strength portion of the show. So it's nice to see an event that's almost dedicated to grip strength. It's very exciting for someone like me who's a kind of a grip strength guy. So it's super cool, and it's a max max effort 1-2, which is really cool. I mean, even if it was for reps, I'd still be pretty excited. Just because either way, it should be a good event for me, and shouldn't zero anything. I think the only one I'm even kind of mildly nervous about is going to be the farmers, which is 250 a hand. I've done that before in multiple competitions, but no drops allowed. So it's going to be one of those, like, I may just have to walk slowly in order to just finish the event and not shake my hands too much and risk them opening up. But it is what it is. It'll be a fun little show. The only sort of downside I see right now, like this very moment, is that it's going to be quite cold for Florida. Normally Florida, when I compete outside in Florida, normally it's in the 80s, feels like 90s, sometimes even the 90s, and it feels like the hundreds. It's just so humid and hot in this state, especially when you go south, even more south. I'm more in like the central Florida area, but when you go south, it's closer to the sun somehow. And it's supposed to be like 30 degrees or something like that on Sunday, which changes things. It's part of the reason when I talk to people and I talk to them about competing, and I'm like, indoor competitions are sometimes tougher, just because usually when it's indoors, there's air conditioning. And I don't mean indoors as in inside of a gym, which some settings are like that, which I actually think those are... I kind of prefer those because we don't have to worry about rain as much, usually at all, hopefully, right? But then there's also usually fans going, and you don't have to worry about the sun. So it's usually a much better thing when it's like indoor and almost like a CrossFit gym. There's been several competitions are held that way. I mean, when it's indoors in like an arena where there's air conditioning pumping, it kind of changes things a little bit, because generally it's so hot in Florida that once you're sort of warmed up in general, you kind of just stay that way. And even when you're sitting around in between events, which in certain competitions can take an hour between events sometimes, you don't really cool off much because you're still just sitting there in 80-degree weather even when you're underneath a tent. So it's different because of that. And when you're indoors, they usually keep it around 70, so you can sort of feel yourself cooling off. You get really sweaty, and then you cool off quickly, and your whole body feels cold. So staying warm in between events is going to be a challenge this go around, which I've done indoor competitions, but it's never been 30. It's never been below like 70 or 60 degrees, 65 degrees when I've competed in a quote cold competition. So it's going to be one of those. I may bring a pair of pants just to wear in between events, and a nice jacket just to try to stay as warm as possible in between events, especially my hands, just because man, doing farmers or grip stuff with cold hands, it's a tough day. Everything feels more painful when your hands are cold, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, it's neat that there's going to be that little bit of extra challenge is probably the right word, that little extra thing to think about. So that's cool. Like I said, it should be a fun comp, but even though it's that sort of thing, I'm also about 3 weeks out from Orlando's in mid-February, and I have to cut down to 181 for that, or just compete in the 200s, but I'd like to not do the 200s. And with that in mind, I was like, you know what, let me just change some things around, go a little bit easier this week, drop things maybe 5 to 7.5% from what I planned. Back it off just a little bit, do, not necessarily a deload, but just something that's not going to kill me. Just to make sure I'm recovered for Sunday. A day, normally, when it's competition, I'll stop training somewhere around 3 days out, especially when I have to cut weight. But this go around, I was just like, yeah, it's not necessarily a super serious competition, so, which I'm not taking it super seriously either. I've ad nauseum said to my training partner, who's also competing in it, multiple times, and he's just like, we get it, it's not serious for you. I'm like, do you know it's not serious to me? Really the only event I care about is the axle, and I'm willing to sacrifice points in other places to make sure that event goes well for me. Just because I like being known as a grip guy, and I'm quite well known as a grip guy, so I want to make sure that I show up and perform when I have to. And luckily I had about 6-ish weeks of training on the axle to sort of get it to where I wanted it to be, or at least get it higher than day one. And we'll see, day of. I've got 3 attempts. First attempt is going to be pretty heavy, and then the second attempt will be a PR just because it's going up by 20 pounds every time without my choice. So it'll go up 20 pounds, and that'll be a PR, and then if I hit 20 over that, that'll be a 40-pound PR. So actually be a 50-pound PR technically. And that'd be cool. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. You never know what's going to happen day of, and I'm going to do my best to kind of give my hands and forearms as much of a break as I can the next day. I actually kind of did a bit of wrenching, literally, with them today, and I'm kind of like, maybe that wasn't such a great idea, but I was a mechanic for a lot of years. I've always worked with hand tools. I tell people that's probably why I have sort of a natural inclination to being good at grip, just because I worked with hand tools for 10, 15 years almost. And it doesn't make you super, super strong with grip, but it makes your endurance crazy. It takes a lot of effort in order to actually make my forearms feel like sore. Just because of so many years of just forcing them to just work and have to work for hours at a time, you just kind of get used to it. Your body adapts. So I'm good at, that's why, my national record was, an endurance thing, and I, killed the old record by like 17 seconds because it's just like, I just got to stand here and hold it. Okay, I can do that for a long time. And so, yeah, this week, backed things off a little bit. Squats in the beginning of the week actually completely changed the game there. I ended up doing like 70-something% for like 3 sets of 10 or 8. I don't even remember exactly what I did. All I know is I was like, oh shit, I need to do more of these because these were a lot harder than they should have been. Pressing earlier in the week, I think I did strict pressing, and it started out as a really shitty session, and then kind of as time went on in the session, I was like, all right, this got better. And then deadlifts went great. Yesterday, actually, I thought it was going to be a really rough deadlift session, and honestly, it felt good. It felt really strong. And then tonight, super, super light push and push press, push jerk session with the axle, actually, just out of the rack, too, so nothing strenuous. to the point where it's going to leave me gassed. Because on the overhead at the comp, it's the log opens at 180, and I should be able to do that. I've been able to do it pretty consistently in training, and by pretty consistently I mean every time I touch it I do it. So I should be able to get at least the opener, which would be fun. And then if I hit the 200, honestly, that would be a PR on log in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's one of those things. Log is just not my bag, and I need to throw it in the rotation and really work on it to get better at it. But it's just not one of those events that competitions I've done in the last year didn't really have a lot of log. So it wasn't something I touched. And the reality is I probably should be touching it more because it's such a huge, awkward object that it can only help my pressing, really. And especially with push pressing, I really suck at push pressing on the log. Most of my stuff I just strict just because it's easier than trying to dip and not die. So, but that's good. There's always stuff to work on, you know. I'm always working on something, trying to get better here, trying to get a little bit better there, you know, 1% here, 1% there. It adds up. And I mean, that's why over the years I've just gotten better and better. And I'm finally getting to that point where I'm actually close to, you know, some of the other guys in the class where I'm like, hey, I can actually almost keep up now, you know, or even in some cases keep up. Not beat anybody just yet, but I can keep up, and that's cool. So yeah, Sunday should be a fun day. I'll try to get as much footage I can. I actually have to clean up my phone just because there's a bunch of stuff on it, and last time I tried to record a bunch of stuff, it was like, whoa, there's too much on it, and it's messing up, and so I'll do what I can to make sure I can get some footage of the events, and then I'll get that squared away and put up as quick as I can. Still going to have to sit down at some point and do my new weekly update opening and all that good stuff because I do have some cool footage from last year. And yeah. So yeah, remember there's not necessarily anything wrong with training the week of the comp. And a lot of it's going to just be how you feel about it, that sort of thing. And the important thing is when you're leading into a comp, don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything that could hurt you. You know, if you're lifting above 75, 80%, why? What's the purpose of this? You know, that's weights where you're going to get stronger from that at some point. Why are we doing this? You can't get stronger in 2 days. It's just, that's not how it works, unfortunately. So just use your head, train accordingly, and you know, if you're doing a competition, decide before you do it if you're going to take it seriously or not. I recommend doing the first couple ones just for fun, and then pick a couple out of the year that you take seriously, and then the rest just do them for fun, have a good time, that sort of thing. And if you don't, then what's your excuse?